Welcome, everyone, to the Commissaire Commentaries, which is a podcast by USA Cycling officials for officials, riders, and the cycling community as a whole. We are here to discuss various cycling and officiating topics and explore who our officials are, why they do what they do, and what we can do to help our officiating program thrive. We are kind of on a kick right now of doing a descending generational survey of who's in our community and what some different perspectives are from different officials who are different ages and have began officiating for various reasons and do so in different parts of the country, etc. So a true survey of who we have out here and why we do what we do. I am here with my co-host, Ryan Fu. I'm Marcy Weiss, and we've got Sam Alpert from the LA area this time around. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Marcy and Ryan.
Ryan, take it away.
In our past episodes, we usually start with initial impressions or how we met our guests. And I think I met Sam, maybe it was last year, but I heard about him 2 or 3 years ago. And it's funny because last year I got to work with Sam 2 events, and this year I didn't get to work with Sam at all. So actually, this is the first time I'm seeing him over this podcast. But Sam, I think, is one of our younger officials, and he's going through the ranks. And we were at Master National Championships last year in Augusta. And I was just really impressed how Sam really in the criterium race with the Masters. It was kind of interesting that all the Masters, as they're lining up to the criterium, they don't know what to do. They're trying to figure out what they start. And Sam was just really great at conducting and managing all the racers and telling what to do, where they need to go, and everything. And so I think a lot of the traits that Sam has to become a really great official, he's got it, and really looking forward to hopefully working with him more next season. Marcy, what do you remember working with most about Sam?
So Sam and I actually just met a couple weeks ago. We worked elite and para track nationals together in LA. So super recent. I also heard about Sam a couple years ago, and it's funny the way that news travels of, oh my gosh, there's another young person who's trying to do this seriously. So that's always exciting and really fun, and just what keeps our community alive about hearing someone else who's really committed to be doing all of this. So I was the chief judge and Sam was my assistant judge a couple of weeks ago. So super strong support and feeling really solid on the stand as a team. So great experience, and looking forward to the many more to come.
Thank you both for those kind words. Great to hear that.
Well, Sam, tell us about yourself. What got you into cycling in general?
I never had a choice about cycling. Both my parents are cyclists, and I never had a choice to do it. When I was young enough, my mom put me on a bike and told me to ride down a hill. So I was taught from a very young age how to do it. And when I was younger, I started track cycling more. Track has always been my home area in cycling, but I never had a choice again. I had to do it. I either was at the track, I was on a bike on the road, or I was at a bike race helping my parents. So I never had a choice again, as I said thousands of times. But I think that it has allowed me to know how to get through a bike race, because I've seen them all over. I've seen different types of bike races, but I'm 21 now. I've been officiating for seven years maybe. I started when I was 16. There was a question of whether or not I could actually officiate a bike race. So there was always that question. I think Huck was technical director at the time. And I remember having emails with him and his and people from USAC all, and the question of whether or not I could actually officiate. Um, and I could, so I did. Um, because I mean, what else is there to do? I was stuck at a bike race because it turned out I wasn't a good racer, and instead of just sitting there doing nothing, I could make a little bit of money and be entertained for a couple hours.
Yeah, that's a little similar to mine, where it was like I just grew up at the races, and so at some point, you have to spend a lot of hours training on a bike to have fun racing, in my experience. So it's a lot easier and more fun, I think, to hop out there
Yeah,
as official and
it's better to sit on a stage and be able to watch a bike race from a good view than it is to be in the back of the pack or off the back or literally just sitting there in the sun. It's we have that perspective on it because what else do we had to do? We were at a bike race.
right, yeah. And I agree too with the value of, just the number, once you've been to a zillion bike races, you just end up seeing all this, you see the normal stuff all the time, and then the weird stuff, it accumulates after a while. So, at some
Yeah.
point you've really just seen
Yeah.
quite a bit, even if you weren't necessarily always the one that was in charge of managing it, that just being there and soaking it all in really adds to that experience.
No, I definitely agree. I think just being at the bike, I'm a psych major in school right now, so we learn a lot about how we learn. And that is one thing we learn very well, and a way that we learn very well is through just watching others and then being able to take that into our own actions really does something for us. We're able to observe what we've seen that as normal or not normal at a bike race. And as officials, we're able to say, all right, well, that's not correct because that's not how we do it.
Mm-hmm. And so when you decided to start officiating, had either of your parents ever officiated, or were they like, oh, you want to do that instead of racing? Or, what was that like?
So I started officiating. Sally Urfer got me into officiating. I was volunteering at 2017 Masters Track World somewhere possible. I forget which event exactly I was helping her at, but I told my parents that I was interested in becoming an official. My parents were never officials. Um, they had no interest in that. My mom works in the movie industry. My dad worked for GTE and Verizon for years, so none of them knew anything about that. Um, I think it. I think my parents weren't surprised that I wanted to do that. They said, "Oh, so you want to walk around with a clipboard and a whistle? It sounds like a great fit for you." And to this day, I continue to carry around my whistle and my clipboard when I officiate. But I think my parents weren't surprised because it was just my personality to want to not necessarily be in charge, but be someone to help others and to help organize and follow a rule book.
Yeah, I mean, management isn't a bad word to use there. It's
No,
organizing and managing what's going on. Not even in
yeah,
a disciplinary perspective, but
yeah,
someone's
exactly.
gotta make it all happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they were surprised that I wanted
Yeah.
to. I think they were more surprised by the fact of, okay, so you're a 16-year-old boy who doesn't have a car or a driver's license yet. How do you expect to get to the bike race?
Yeah.
And my answer was, well, you're going to drive me there an hour beforehand and you're going to stay half an hour afterwards. And we can split the money.
Nice. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
compromises.
I mean, that's all we had to do. And my parents got a race. So it was a good deal for both of us.
Nice. Very cool.
Okay, Sam. So you mentioned that you didn't have a choice. You got into it because your parents were active cyclists, and then you mentioned that you you were an okay racer, but you rather contribute in other ways. You mentioned about wanting to help others, organize. What is it in the fun did you see in officiating when you first started?
Well, one of the first races that I apprenticed was Redlands. It was a sunset crit at Redlands, and Phil Miller was the comm driver. Was not the comm driver, was the comm. We were comm 2, I think. And Marilyn Allen was my mentor at the time, helping me get into it. And I remember Phil Miller just standing outside the sunroof. And I remember going, that would be fun. To stand outside a sunroof, to direct a race. I want to stand outside a moving car. But I think that's part of it, is you just never know what can happen. And every race is different. Even 2 races that are the same event that are a year apart are different races. No race is ever the same. Some races are a complete mess with crashes all over or catastrophes all over, and some races go off without a hitch. They're great. Some races are great, some aren't, but you just never know what you're going to get. And I think that's the part that's exciting and fun, because you never know what you're going to have to deal with, and you have to be prepared for whatever you get.
What are some examples of some challenges that you've faced as an official and how to try to resolve it? And through that process, you found something you learned and something that was maybe fun out of it.
I learned something at every race. I think I've had the privilege of working with a lot of great officials, a lot of officials with great experience. And I think learning from them has taught me so much about officiating. But also the different environments. I've worked track races out here in LA mainly, but I've also done road races out in Georgia. I just got back yesterday from Masters and Junior Road Nats, where I got to stand outside my comm car out of my sunroof. Bonnie wasn't very excited with me about that. But it was fun and exciting, and I learned that I should never do that with Bonnie looking at me. But I've learned that you have to take what happens with stride, and if you learn something, write it down and listen to it. But every race I've learned something. I don't think there's been a race where I've walked away saying, oh, that was boring. That was, I didn't learn anything. From even just being an assistant judge and watching other people do all the hard work, especially at local crits, to me being a member of a panel at Masters Nats, to being a member and an additional official at Can Am. Every single race I've learned something at, no matter how the session or the day goes, whether or not something happened or not, there's always something I learned.
Do you have anything that was memorable, Sam? Mm-hmm. Aside from the story about you going out the roof and Bonnie saying no, don't do that.
Yeah, just things like this past week, a rider progressed over the center line, and he ended up taking second. And instead of relegating him in the moment because there was so much going on, I gave him a warning, and it should have been a relegation. I should have had my comm driver pull to the side of the road, and I should have told him outside my car, go to the back of the field. I didn't have my moto available. It was in the feed zone, so lots going on. And I messed up on that, and I learned. Or working my first para event and having Dot Abbott as my chief, and I was a member. And instead of asking the stoker whether to pull the number for placement on a BVI match sprint, I had the pilot do it because I was under the impression that the person in the back can't see, which is not necessarily true. They are just visually impaired. So even learning that, dealing with different athletes and what I assume is probably wrong, and learning from that, and Dot telling me, no, no, you did that wrong, or go do it again. Or at my first time being chief ref, I didn't see an infraction happen. And instead of the riders coming to talk to me, they went straight to Bonnie the day after. So I wake up in the morning with an email straight from Bonnie Walker about an infraction that occurred. And I had to tell her, well, I didn't see anything, but that was a mistake on my part. I should have been looking more. I should have asked my motors if they had seen anything. But of course, also the writer should have come and talked to me. But I guess that's kind of a fault on both of us. I should have taken a bigger step, and they should have also done the same.
Sam, do you find that officiating, especially in referee roles, and I think this probably applies to Marcy as well, when you started officiating at a younger age, one of the challenges is how do older people deal with somebody that's younger in an authority position, and do they trust you? Do they respect you? Do you felt like at times that might be a challenge that you had to face while in those roles? And have you found any ways that can help you deal with those types of situations in appropriate ways?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I have definitely learned how to, yeah, I have when I it happens more when I talk to masters than any other age group. That's mainly because elites they're around officials. They understand what the official's role is, and that the officials more or less have the final authority and say over what happens on the race. Um, and just thinking from a track perspective, because I work track a lot, it's usually masters that are the ones that have an issue with younger people telling them what to do. Um, and usually, the one thing that I can think about is you have to you have to be confident in knowing that you're the official, you're a commissaire, you are, and you have the authority vested in you by USA Cycling at national events. And if you need to tell the rider that crazy thing about how you are vested with the authority, then that's what you have to say, because riders are riders. They're in the mindset of winning, and that includes of winning with you, making sure that they're not going to back down, um, because I'm young. And I think things that I've learned about that is calming them down, making sure that they understand that, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but also making sure that they understand that just because I'm young doesn't mean I'm naive or dumb, especially when it comes to being in that chief referee position where the authority lies with you finally. You're the final say on what the rule book is. And if somebody doesn't like that, then you have to let them know that are that if they want to settle their grievances with how a rule is written, that has to be sent to USA Cycling. But this is how I interpret the rules, and I'm the final say right now. And whether or not that means that you have to make an example of someone, um, it might have to happen. During my first time being chief referee in the same race as I said earlier, I disqualified somebody for inappropriate behavior off the bike. They were using foul language, and I don't appreciate that at especially local crits where there's a lot of families and kids and juniors. So I disqualified him because I just don't believe in that behavior, and I set an example with him saying I will not allow this at my race. And as a chief referee, I'm bestowed to allow that, to not allow that, and to disqualify you. Um, and I've taken that to other races as well, where when I'm chief referee, I'll make an example of a cause that I believe that is right. Um, and it'll, you know, you didn't hold your line during the final sprint, or you're passing underneath. Well, I don't care what you say because my camera shows different, or my officials that are on course as well say different, or my moto says different. You know, it's not only me that's out there. You know, as an official, there's always these people around you also that have your back. And when you're in the chief referee, you have your motos, you have your commissaires, you have your members, you have your judges, and they're all watching. They all see what happens. And at track races, and when you're not in that chief referee position, you have a chief that you can go to, and you can tell them, hey, this is happening. Uh, you know, this person is talking condescendingly to me, or this person is harassing me, or this person's doing this or that. And it's not so much tattletaling as much as, hey, this is happening and it's not right. And I won't, and I don't believe it's right because I'm young. Because, you know, the question also is, would this person be acting the same way to me as they would to, let's say, Noreen? Or are they acting like this towards me because I am younger than the average, much younger than the average age of officials in this country? And I think that's an important distinction as well, is why are they acting like this? Um, and somebody like Noreen, I'm sure every official in this country is aware, Noreen would never take something like that from a writer. So it's also learning from how other people deal with that as well.
Yeah, I think working with a lot of different people, you end up with a lot of great, great and different examples of, demeanor, how to be firm, balancing that
Yeah,
firmness and kindness
yeah,
and
exactly.
empathy with, the incident at hand, because sometimes you want to play up one a lot more than the other, and sometimes it's really necessary to say, number one, we're calming down, come back in 5 minutes and we'll talk, or something like that. So definitely having the nuances between how you might have an interaction with a rider, depending on how big of a race it is, what type of race it is, what the race situation is, their demeanor, etc. So yeah, definitely. I feel like especially starting out, when I started in refereeing roles, it was a big combination of, okay, what would Marcy do? And thinking, what would someone else do? And trying to channel all of those really great official role models at the same time as being authentic to who I am and how I interact with people just on the regular.
No, yeah, I think I think a great point I think you brought up too with that is it depends on which kind of race you're working. You know, national championships is very different than your local crit, especially when you're the official. You know, at a local crit, you know a lot of these riders. You know them because you see them every week, and so they're more or less used to how you enforce the rules, but also they're used to me being of a younger age than other officials. Now, that's versus nationals where you see lots of riders from all over the country who may not know their local officials, and they come out here and they see this 21-year-old wearing a blue shirt and khaki pants, wearing a whistle and holding a clipboard, and telling that person what the rules are is can be hard for them to understand and to comprehend, because it's the same thing of taking orders from a person that's younger at work. You know, it hurts to a certain extent to see that, oh, this younger person is in charge of me. But, you know, it's important for those who are younger and in the officiating role to understand that as well. And that this is, you know, we have to teach them as well to a certain extent that it's okay for me to be younger than you and to know more about the rules than you do. And again, that comes back to the local crit thing, because at the local crit, a lot of our job as officials is to educate to a certain extent, especially Cat 5s and Cat 4s and some Cat 3s who don't learn consistently. Um, and at nationals, they're supposed to know these rules. They're you're racing nationals. You're racing for the stars and stripes, so they're expected to know these rules So my enforcement of the rules is a little harder. So it's even harder to take it from a 21-year-old wearing a blue shirt and khakis.
Okay, Sam. You mentioned about when you started officiating, you were 16 and the rules weren't very clear whether you could officiate or not. And I think you probably noticed that this year there was a new rule in which they added the minimum age that somebody could officiate. So either you must have started a trend because USA Cycling must have gotten a lot of these questions, and so therefore it's like, okay, we should add in the minimum age. But my question is about why do you think just in general that there aren't that many young officials that are interested in officiating?
I think that's a great question. I think that's a question for not just. I think it's a great question. It's still a question that I think USA Cycling is trying to figure out, and I don't have an answer for it. I think it's a mix of trying to find people that want to do it, but also people that have the knowledge to do it. We're not going to take we're not going to take high schoolers from a random high school in Nebraska and turn them into cycling officials. We're not going to take kids from a random college. We're not going to take random kids from UC Irvine and turn them into cycling officials. I think it does take, kind of like what Marcy was saying, where, it takes kids that are kids of masters racers that are constantly at these bike races, who are constantly watching these bike races, and they're seeing these bike races and they're going, oh, well, that's different than what I usually see. Is that even allowed? That starts them on that process of wanting to know what the rules are, and maybe that starts them on the process of wanting to enforce the rules. But I also think it takes a certain personality to want to be an official. Officials are all weird. There's all the officials in this country are oddballs. We're all weird. We all have our quirks, and I think that's something that officials have to have, because of the job is so serious and so stressful at certain times that we do have to be weird before and after the race. We have to be able to joke around with each other. We have to be able to take a good joke or take a burn from each other, just because it's so stressful. And I think that's part of the personality that you need to have as an official, is be able to make friends with someone quickly and be able to work with that person, even if you have differences. Because again, me and Marcy were on a stage together for nearly a week. We're working in so close proximities that we get along. You have to get along with each other. You have to be able to work with each other, and you have to understand what each other needs to do that job. And I think that those qualities they're not necessarily hard qualities in a person, but they're harder qualities in a child and in younger adults, because younger adults are still figuring themselves out. Their personalities are not fully molded. They're still learning. They're still understanding. They still don't know what they want to be or what they want to do. And considering that the younger you are, the harder it is for you to see into the future and plan, that it becomes difficult to try to recruit those individuals to become officials, because they don't understand what it means to be an official, or they don't understand the seriousness of the position. And I think that's hard, and that's one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of young officials, is because those qualities you don't find in a lot of young people. And that's not anything that USAC can change. You can't go out and wave a wand and magically everybody is able to work with each other and understand the position and stuff. But I think it takes being able to reach out to different groups, and try to see if they have people. And again, that comes back to kids of masters racers, because masters racers are always at the races, and their kids are usually there to watch as well. So seeing if those kids want to become officials, and maybe that means starting out as a marshal on the course, Or maybe that means you're a volunteer and you're helping at bike check, or you're helping sign in riders, like those kind of positions where you're almost close to the authority, and you're close to the action of being an official. And maybe that gets a child, or not a child, but like a minor, somebody under the age of 18, but also a young adult, maybe you 23, to want to do that because they see it, they need something to do. This past week at Masters and Junior Road, we had a cadet part of this program out at Fort Eisenhower, who was my turnaround volunteer at the turnaround point for the time trial on Monday. And I was with him for at least 2 hours. And at the end of it, he was talking to me about how he wants to help more at bike races. And then one of the moto refs pulls up, and it was a barman. Barman pulls up on his moto, and he's like, "Oh, that's a nice bike." I said, and barman asked, "Oh, do you have a bike?" He's like, "No, but I'm thinking about getting one." And I was like, "Oh, well, there, you have a new moto referee possibly." Because if you get him to volunteer at these races and you build his interest in the racing perspective and understanding the race, then he may want to become an official. And if that means like, oh, he has a bike and he's a good motorcyclist, then yeah, he might be interested in becoming a moto referee at that point. But it's those smaller steps of getting them into that, because again, this kid's personality is not fully made yet. He may wake up next week and be like, "Oh, I don't want to do that stuff. That's boring." But he also may wake up thinking, "Oh, I would love to do that again." So it's like a two-pronged problem. There's no good solution to it, because the requirements of being an official you don't find in a lot of young people. But also, if you slowly introduce them to the sport, they may want to, but it also may drive them away at the same time. Seeing the amount of stress and the amount of work that is required. It's not easy to work 4 track days back to back to back. It's not easy to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to a road race for an entire day, to work 12 hours. This isn't easy stuff. It takes a toll on our bodies. As much as racers are, they're racing for 60 minutes. I think to a certain extent, as officials, our bodies get used more. We're tired more at the end of the day because we're doing that. We have to be constantly on. We don't get an off time unless there's a break in the schedule. And that's, again, harder for younger people to understand, because we may not want to do that. We may want to go do something else. We might have shorter attention spans. So being able to be constantly on for 12 hours is not easy for anyone, let alone someone that doesn't have any experience doing that. The older you get, the more experience you have with these longer days, working long hours. But as young people, we don't have that. And that's the hard part, is trying to get them to understand that that is part of the job.
It would be super cool if USAC could wave a wand for a lot of stuff. But I think that also all of the officials ourselves, as like individual local leaders, can do a lot to invite new people into the community and find ways to break down the barriers that might keep people away. There are opportunities, locally that would lend well to younger or less experienced people. When I've offered apprenticeships locally that will offer them for half days or whatever it is, just because someone isn't necessarily ready to do a whole day doesn't mean there's not value in giving them a chance to come out and introducing them more, seeing if they are interested, giving them more of a taste of it. So I think that in what you're saying, it does actually highlight some opportunities to get them around and part of the community so that it's possible to recognize and identify that talent.
Yeah, I think that's good too, and really important. That takes effort from a lot of the LAs, and yeah, and that's where it becomes a kind of a spiral issue, because if there's not enough officials in the first place, you can't get more officials because you can't offer those opportunities. And I think that's where USAC could provide some resources to the local communities to try to get more officials. But that's where this is not a problem that can be fixed overnight. This is more of a generational issue, and just an issue with officials all over. Eventually, uh, Ryan, your generation will no longer be in officiating. Um, that means the people above you won't be in officiating either, and then it'll be Marcy and I's generations that are officials. But at this point, we don't have the numbers that we need to do bike races. So it's a problem, and it's a problem that's becoming bigger every year, I think.
Definitely a problem. Looking at the age spread, at some point, we got to beef up those numbers to keep being able to pass along that generational knowledge. And I think across the board between promoters, officials, coaches, etc., just making sure that there's that turnover to, hand off to the next generation.
Yeah, I think it'll just it'll happen over time, but it's how much help does it need from those groups?
Sam, how has officiating changed the way you have come to see cycling?
One of the other problems with becoming an official is you can never look at a bike race the same way. Like I'm getting ready to watch the Olympics, but what am I going to be watching for? Well, I'm not going to be watching the race exactly. I'm going to be watching the rules, or I'm going to be watching the riders for other problems that might arise. It's when I watch world championships, elite world championships, or any bike race, the Tour de France, where it's as officials, you're not really watching the race because it's a great race. You're most likely in a partial part, maybe only a part of your mind, but you're watching for their conduct. You're watching the results. So I think that's another thing is becoming an official kind of takes the fun of bike racing out to a certain extent when watching it at these higher level events, because you're wondering, all right, are they, why is Com3 sending these cars up? What's Com2 doing? What's Com1 doing? Why did they move their moto here? Why did they move this vehicle here? Or why are they why are they putting up the neutralization flag, the yellow flag at a track event? Why are they stopping the race now? You get into these aspects of, why is it happening? Because we want to know as officials, but also because we're interested, because is that something that we would call? Is that something that we would do? And that's part of becoming an official, is that you can no longer watch bike races the same way, which is both good and bad. I mean, you understand more of what's going on, but at the same time, sadly, you know more about what's going on, and you can't just sit back and enjoy.
Sam, you're going to college at UCI, not that UCI. What do you do outside of cycling? What other hobbies do you have? And
sadly, I don't have a lot of hobbies. It's usually weekend bike racing. But I go to UC Irvine. I'm studying psychology with an emphasis in child development. I want to become a school counselor when I'm older. I've gotten great work with masters because sometimes they're the same as children. I think I work for the Redondo Beach Unified School District. I currently work in their IT department. I work as a video and media specialist, making videos for the district to get students to come here, but as well as to teach our own staff and our own students different things that need to be done within our district. I taught at this district. I led 3 years. I led a program for broadcast journalism here until I passed it on to a different staff member because I needed to take a step back and focus on my own education. But that's basically it. If I'm not here, I'm at a bike race or I'm at home studying. It's very rare that I'm doing something else.
I think that not having much to say outside of cycling kind of demonstrates one of the struggles of, being someone who's very committed to it, is once you're
That's true.
being committed, you're real entrenched here. So I think that that's one of the other things that just
Yeah.
makes
I
it
think
a little hard is this is, when you're doing this seriously, it can be a huge commitment.
Yeah. I mean, I think once you become an official and you get to that point, it's true. Like, I got back from a 5-day trip and I leave next week for my A class. So it's a constant turnaround of events, and it's, you're taking time off of work or you're taking time off of school if you're in school. And I think that's not easy for everyone to do. But once that you get in it,
yeah, I think that like that not being easy to do also goes with being a young person. When you see like it's maybe a little easier lifestyle wise to balance being a retiree, the age of a lot of officials, once you've already gone to school and had a family and your kids are grown up or something. So I think that highlights one of the struggles of young people officiating as well.
It sounds like you're devoting your life to officiating and cycling.
it's more like it's this. Yeah, these. I mean, I do other stuff. I try to, but I'm trying to also make sure that I had told Bonnie earlier this year that I can't work some bike races that I wanted to. I wanted to work Redlands this year again because I worked it last year, but I couldn't because it would have required another week and a half off from school because I took time off for Pan Am track. So I told her I would love to do it, but I can't. And she understood, and I think that's one thing nice about a lot of officials is they understand that there is that I am in this tough spot where I'm in the middle of trying to advance my cycling career as an official, but also I'm trying to advance myself in becoming what I would like to do for my future career.
While you're having time to advance your officiating career, I've heard that you are preparing for both the track A and road A course. Is that what you're planning, or is just the track this year?
So it was originally going to be track and road, but the road one was moved to October, which is in the middle of UC Irvine's quarter for the fall. So I'm not sure yet if I will be taking that one. I am taking the track A one. I leave on Tuesday next week for it. No, Monday. I leave Monday midnight from LA. So I am excited for it. I am getting ready. I got an email from Noreen today about what to do for the pre-work for the course. So I will be, for the next week, indulging myself in the UCI track rulebook, as well as indulging myself in the track Commissaire's guide. 285 pages for me to read. So I am excited for it because I am excited to learn about what it takes to become the next level. I'm stressed because of what it will take. I'm a little scared if I don't pass and I don't get it. But I'm hoping that I'm confident that it will be a good experience for me to have.
You have mentioned about people you look up to, right? Noreen, Sally, Dot. Who are some other memorable mentors, and what have they imparted with you in terms of their knowledge? What is something that you look up to them with your mentors?
Yeah, my first mentor was Marilyn Allen and Jim Allen. Both are great officials. During COVID, I've lost contact with them, but they were amazing to me. So was Zach Mano, Sally, of course, Noreen. All these great officials have imparted their knowledge. Dot has imparted her knowledge too. Zach has imparted the knowledge on how to annoy Dot. So I think that's also something that, as I said earlier, that happens is you have to be able to take a joke, and learning from each other and how to annoy each other is great. Steve Cruz is amazing with how to take a joke. Steve Cruz is Steve Cruz. But I just think that everybody that I've met along the way, including you, Ryan, and Marcy, I've learned from, uh, and just how to officiate and how to become a better official. So, do I have anybody specific to thank? Yeah, and I did, but I also thank everyone else that I've come in contact with, because everyone has taught me in some form, in some way of what to do.
That's good. Glad we got an opportunity to thank some of our teachers and mentors.
Okay, so pretending that the year is 2073, you are 70 years old, and ignoring whatever the titles for officials are in those days and like all the different races you'll have been to, what do you hope to have gifted the cycling community? Like, what do you want your legacy to be?
I think I want my, it's funny because I was thinking about, I think I was thinking about that when I was talking to Bonnie last week, and I was like, oh, what do I want to be known like? Oof, what do I want to be known for as? Um, and I've been talking about that with some of my coworkers at my job, like, oh, what do I want to be known as around here? I think one thing I want to be known as is I want to be known as a funny, nice person that's easy to talk to get along with, and an educator, somebody to educate the cycling community. But also, I want to be known for, the idea that we have rules and that this sport needs rules. Um, there's the old saying that if there are no rules, we have anarchy and we have mayhem. In cycling, we need the rules. And yeah, if you don't want to live by the rules, or you don't want to abide by our rules, you don't have to go to a cycling race. But if you come to a cycling race, you need to abide by them, and that includes all of them. We don't select which rules we want to apply when we want to apply. We need to listen to all of them, and I think that's something that I do want to be. I want to be known as somebody who's approachable, fun, caring, educating, but also somebody that will, when the time comes, will enforce the rules as appropriate. And whether or not that means I have to stand outside my comp car through the sunroof, or I have to walk onto the track surface and shoot my starter's pistol to end a race. I think that's what I want to be known for, is both worlds, the best of both worlds, fun and serious.
I was going to ask as like a, second half of that question, will there still be officials, or will races be completely run by AI and robots?
That's a great question. I think I was talking to Chris Pease about that at Elite Mats. We were talking about some of the AI stuff he's working on. And I think one thing nice about officials is I don't think our job will be taken over. For the point of, it takes a human's ability to understand the situation in a greater aspect, in a greater picture than what a computer might be able to understand. I don't work too much in computers, so I don't know. Maybe computers are smarter and they can look in bigger pictures. I don't know. I don't know the AI models, but I think at this point, officiating will not be done by AI or a computer. It takes the human element to be educational to a certain extent, but also to be forceful on the rules. And it takes the ability to know when to be an educator and when to be an enforcer, that a computer may not, and probably does not understand, especially when it comes to Cat 4 and 5s. Where do you draw the line on enforcement versus the rule on education? You educate a Cat 5 on, oh, you can't wear earbuds, on your bike. But it takes you to enforce it on a Cat 1. Hey, this. You've been racing for a long time. And I think that knowledge of when to do the enforcement and when to do the education is the part where the computer may not be able to understand fully. But also, to what degree do you enforce? Do you give a warning, a relegation, or a disqualification? That aspect takes, not even a human can do it half the time. Because as officials, we're always working with somebody else on, well, what do you think? As the PCP, you take the knowledge of people around you, and you listen to your other commissaires. And I think that that's something that a computer may not be able to do, because there's no good solution here. There's three solutions, and neither one of them is right. Neither one of them is right nor wrong, but it's how you interpret the rule. And a computer can only answer with A, B, or C, not A point C, or this or that, this and that. It's this or that. And I think that's something that as officials we have that safety from AI. I mean, AI is great and it might end up helping us in certain aspects, but we need to be part of the race still. And will we have officials at that time? I sure hope so. If people want to continue to ride their bikes and have championships, we're going to need officials. So people are going to have to stand up at some point to help.
Well, Sam, that was a very insightful answer. Sam, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We really learned a lot about you today. And we wish you good luck with the Track A class. With that, to our listeners, if you have any suggestions or ideas or would like to be a guest on the Commissaire Commentaries, please send them to usac.officials.podcast@gmail.com or commissaire.commentaries@gmail.com. Thank you again, Sam, and we will see everybody on our next episode.